Hi YouTube, it's Kathy. As I'm recording this, it's July 2nd, 2023, and if I've done this well, or if I've completely given up, you're seeing this probably in the latter half of September. Today is my first day of the 75 Hard Challenge, which is in fact a very difficult challenge. It's billed as a mental toughness challenge, but also it has a lot of activity and things that are supposed to be good for your body. So really there is also this aspect of it where like you're thinking that by doing this you're gonna get more fit and all of those types of things. And that is brought out in the fact that one of the stipulations of the challenge is you need to take a progress picture every day of the challenge. This challenge is really hardcore, by the way. Before I tell you all the rules, if you miss a single rule on a single day in the challenge, technically you have to start back at day one. And for some reason that makes me even more determined to actually complete this challenge. Like I said, as I'm starting this, it's July 2nd, and as I'm finishing it, hopefully, it will be September 14th. But current me has absolutely no way of knowing that because I'm on day one. I just came back from my morning walk, which is the first rule. In this challenge, you need to do two 45-minute workouts every single day, and one of them has to be outside. I've already started training myself to do this. I've already started training myself to every single morning get up and do a morning walk before I do anything else. And I actually had to extend my route by about 5 minutes to get to the 45-minute mark, but I figured out a way to do that, and I even timed it to make sure that I would make that stipulation. So that's cool. It's also a Sunday, so I have a dance cardio class that I go to, so that will be my other workout for the day. You also need to drink an entire gallon of water every day, and I've also been training myself up to this. I don't go anywhere without this water bottle. I've already consumed one of these, and to get to a gallon I need to drink just over 4.5 of these, so I'm just calling it 5 for ease sake. And I've been doing it over the last few days, so I'm not trying to start everything on day one, because that would be silly. I've already taken a progress picture, although I might take one at the gym because then I can do a full-length mirror situation. For this challenge, you also need to stick to a diet. You can have no cheat meals, and you can't have any alcohol. So I've already told everybody that I hang out with on the regular that I will not be drinking during this period. Please don't tempt me, and also keep the junk food away from me. The diet, of course, that I will be sticking to, if you don't know, I am vegan, and it is going to be based around whole foods. Again, this is something that I've been training myself for about the past month or so since I got back from Europe, because I've been making most of my own meals and I'm getting pretty good at it. Sometimes it's not perfect, but I'm doing a pretty decent job. I also have the bonus that I work from home, so I'm able to just get up and make myself food whenever I want, so that is definitely a plus when it comes to planning for this type of thing. The last rule, unless I've forgotten anything because it's first thing in the morning, so maybe I have, is that every single day you need to read at least 10 pages of a non-fiction book that is somewhere in the realm of personal development. I've pulled some off my shelves. Some of these will be rereads and some of these will just be reads, and then I've also gotten some recommendations from other people that I will be pulling from the library. One of the stipulations that I do not agree with, because it's ableist and kind of bullshit, is you do need to be reading a physical copy. Audiobooks don't count, but it's not like I'm gonna stop listening to audiobooks during this time. I listen to an audiobook every morning on my morning walk and as I go to the gym and that type of thing. However, specifically for those 10 pages of nonfiction, I will do it by the book because I am pretty determined to say that I actually did the 75 Hard Challenge and I didn't do any like little cheats here or there. Don't get me wrong, it is going to be tough, especially if I do something like travel literally anywhere, because it always throws my schedule off. But I'm determined. So let's see how it goes. This is hopefully going to be a vlog of today and the next 74 days if I don't have to start over because I've messed something up. And I'm not going to check in every single day, but I do want to do a wrap up of all of the books that I end up reading for this challenge, as that is something to bring it into the wider context of what I generally do here. That being said, I'm going to end this intro and then film this week's weekly wrap up because I need to do that before I go to dance cardio. So, wish me all the luck. Hi, I'm a fair chunk of a way into this challenge, so I figured I should probably update you. I'm still technically reading my first book for this challenge, which is Me and White Supremacy. I actually reread this every year, so this is the 5th time I'm reading it. And I am keeping up to the at least 10 pages a day. I've read probably just a little bit just to make sure I'm definitely getting those 10 pages because I do not want to mess this up on literally any technicality. I do hope to, however, finish this soon so I can move on to some of the other books that are on my list, because I've got many things out from the library right now and I just kind of want to make sure I get through them before I need to return them. It's also funny because when you're looking up the rules to this challenge, depending on where you look, it just says 10 pages of nonfiction, and then some rules actually point out that it has to be personal development nonfiction. So I have a number of books that I plan on reading that are personal development nonfiction, but then I have some other books that I've either read or will be reading around this time frame that are also nonfiction. I just kind of want to throw those in here as well, even though they don't really count and I'm not using them strictly for those 10 pages a day. The first one that I read is one called Len and Cub, A Queer History, and it's about these two men who used to live in New Brunswick way back in the day. We're talking about 100 years ago. And what's interesting about them is we can tell that they were in a queer relationship, at least at some point, because Len actually took a lot of photographs of the time. He was from a fairly wealthy family and actually had access to a camera. He was part of the first family in town to have a car so they could go on adventures together, all these types of things. So it was a very interesting story and very interesting history of that time that we don't usually get to see, because obviously queer history is just suppressed, nobody talks about it, and then having this added element of all of these photos that he took was also wonderful. Another nonfiction that I actually just started reading yesterday is A Whisper in the Night Dark. The tagline on this one is The True History of a Wilderness Legend. This one is interesting and I have no idea how it ended up on my holds list from the library, but it's about this adventurer who goes to Labrador specifically, which is a section of the country I haven't actually been to. I've been to Newfoundland, and the province is called Newfoundland and Labrador, but I haven't been to the Labrador section of it. And that's mainly because not a lot of people go there. It is basically all wilderness, and it's him just trying to figure out if he can find this town that used to exist and figure out if there is kind of a creature there, or a type of creature there that was spotted many times in the 1930s, and what that creature might have actually been. I'm not super far into it, but I am super intrigued to find out what he decides is the end of this and whether or not they can even find this old town. Like I've mentioned, I've got a stack of other books that I plan to get to eventually, and I'm looking forward to that. As for how the rest of the challenge is going, I am doing super well. Like I said, I do not want any technicalities to tell me that I didn't finish this challenge in the 75 days I want to do it in, because like I said before, if you mess up, you go to day one, and I don't want to do that. And basically the biggest tip I can give you for this one is planning. Like, I went away this weekend, but I brought my own food. I was only staying one night so I could see a family friend who was actually visiting for a very short amount of time because she was in town for a wedding and now she's gone back to England, and I only got to see her that one day. But I brought my own food so I wouldn't be tempted to eat the food that was there. I also carry my water bottle around literally everywhere I go, and it's made it really easy to get my 5 water bottles a day. Which, if you're keeping track, is about 4 liters, which is a little bit more than the 1 gallon I'm supposed to have every day. Also, I'm doing this challenge in summer, which makes that part way easier, because if I was doing this in winter, I think I would have to count a lot of tea as my water consumption. As for the workouts, I'm doing really well. Like, my morning walk is still a wonderful thing that I continue to enjoy doing, and then it's kind of fun to figure out what I'm going to do for my other thing, whether or not it's going to be a video that I do downstairs in the basement, whether or not it's a video I do in just an open room in the gym, whether it's a class at the gym, whether it's just going for another walk if I don't have time for anything else, or the use of exercise bikes, because while I was away I actually used an exercise bike that I didn't even realize was at that house. And I've been having fun putting together these daily spreads where I do my progress photo, but then I also show other photos of what I did that day, and that actually makes it really fun to share on Instagram, and I have a whole highlight for this challenge in specific. So I'm doing pretty well so far. I just wanted to touch base and say that yes, I'm doing all of the things, I'm doing all of the reading, and hopefully once I get onto another book that I'm specifically reading for the 10 pages a day for this challenge, I will let you know how it is. Hi, I figured it's about time to come on and give you some updates. All of the other nonfiction books I've already talked about in this video I've completed. I've moved on to Breathe Like a Badass, which is all about meditation, which is not something I've really thought about doing before, but I figured anything that decreases anxiety sounds like a good idea, because sometimes I get that from time to time. I'm also listening to Finding Me by Viola Davis, and she reads it herself, which is always a wonderful bonus in audiobooks that are read by their authors. She has had an incredibly traumatic and difficult life, as well as a very interesting and theatrical life. So it definitely has its highs and its lows, but if you are at all sensitive to any form of abuse towards children or the death of animals, definitely look up trigger warnings ahead of time before going into that one. I've also recently started reading Last Call. This one also has a very long subtitle. It is a true story of love, lust, and murder in queer New York. This is about a killer called the Last Call Killer who was killing queer men in New York City in the early 90s. So far I'm really enjoying how it's laid out. We are starting with the first person who was killed by this killer. We don't know who the killer is yet, and then we're going on through subsequent victims, getting to know about the victims, which is something I always appreciate in my true crime content. So that's that, just a quick update on what I've been reading. I'm also doing really well in all the other aspects of the challenge. I haven't really been thinking, oh, I could just have, you know, this one chip or whatever and it wouldn't matter. I'm like, no, I don't need that. It's fine. I have 2 months left. I can totally do this. I'm one of those people that really thrives on routine. So now that I feel like I'm in a groove of a routine, I'm going to be able to stick this through just fine. Unless there's some weird thing that makes me slip up, I think I'm going to get through this. Hi, I've started a new book, so it's time for an update. I have just started American Detox, The Myth of Wellness and How We Can Truly Heal. Now, I didn't really know anything about this one going into it. Going into this challenge, I put out some feelers online to ask what kind of books I should read for this because, you know, the kind of self-help-ish genre isn't something I've really dived into all that much, and this was a book that came up, so I saw that my library had it, and I put a hold on it, and it's been sitting there waiting for me to finish Breathe Like a Badass so that I could pick this one up. By the way, Breathe Like a Badass, about a 3.5 for me. Specifically near the end it started getting interesting, but there was a lot to it that I was just like, I don't really understand why I should be meditating. Like, I sort of understand that it's been great for you, but like, do I just sit there and try to think of nothing? Like, I didn't really get too much out of it besides like, it's worked for some people, and that's nice. I like that. But I felt like it was a book mostly of quotes of other people's thoughts about meditation. In any case, if it's a topic that you're interested in, it's definitely a good jumping off point. But anyway, I just read the introduction of this morning as well as the foreword, so I will not tell you that I can just tell you everything about what this book is, but it is about the wellness industry and how we are constantly being fed the narrative that we need to be smaller and do this and that and the other thing and buying things to do that, and how when we're very, very focused on that small little thing about our own self-improvement, it's very easy to block out the outside world and not really realize fully how bad things are outside of our own little personal bubble, and how there are societal structure-based things that we should be looking at. Like I said, I've only read the introduction, so I do not feel qualified to tell you more than that, other than I am very intrigued and very excited to read this, and I'm currently in workout gear because I need to do a workout now so I can go to the dentist later and spend a lot of money on having them freeze my jaw and fix a tooth that I accidentally chipped the other day while trying to get a chia seed out of it. Actually, that actually messed up 2 teeth, and then I have a cavity in another tooth because I hadn't been to the dentist in 9 years because, you know, we like to say that healthcare is free in Canada, but it's not. Going to the dentist, that's a thing you gotta pay for. All the things to do with teeth, that's a thing you gotta pay for. Eye care, that's a thing you gotta pay for. Which is why I've never actually had an eye test, but I can see better than anyone who I spend any time with, so I've been putting that one off. Anyway, update over, gotta go do some stuff. Post-dentist update. I am really glad that I drank most of my water before I went to the dentist. I've got another this much of this and then 1 more of these to go today, because yeah, this is frozen and drinking water is quite a production right now. Hi, I'm just popping in really quickly because over the past 2 days I read another nonfiction book and I need to tell you about it. It is called The Natural Mother of the Child, a memoir of non-binary parenthood. This is exactly what it sounds like. It is a non-binary person and their journey through parenthood and how it can be perceived as very messy compared to what the normal people do. Essentially, the author of this is AFAB. They marry a woman. They want to both have carried at least one of their children their wife has a child and then they have a child pretty soon after that. And it's all about going through that experience, but then also what parenthood looks like, and also connecting back to both of their family roots and all of these different documents that they had to go through, because each of them had to adopt each other's children, because that's how that works, and that's super freaking weird. Like I said, I read it over 2 days. It was absolutely fascinating, and I highly recommend that you check it out if you're interested in this perspective. Hi, I have a couple of updates, two specifically from yesterday. Now, yesterday I had to bottle a batch of wine because I put on a batch of wine back in June before I even started this, and it was time to finally bottle it. And I'm just going to show you what I put on the label because I'm excited to drink it, but I can't drink it yet, but I will drink it when I can. The second update specifically from yesterday is that I did a set of measurements just for kind of being just past the halfway mark of the challenge. And yeah, the data shows that things are happening. So I was pretty excited about that. It is always very nice to have data to look at and go, oh yeah, things are happening. Okay, good. I started another nonfiction book that I'm not reading specifically for this project about a week ago, and I figured I should tell you about it now. That's Life is a Unicorn, a journey from shame to pride and everything in between. This one is about a British-born Iraqi non-binary person who is also a drag queen. And if you've been on my channel before, you know that that sounds fantastic to me. What I'm enjoying about this is the author has gone through some things, but has also not been the greatest person, and is also very vulnerable in telling us all about that. I'm only a little bit more than halfway through because I've been reading other things and doing other things, but I wanted to let you know that I've been meaning to read this for ages, and I finally did get it from the library. As for books I'm officially reading for this challenge, I finished American Detox and have returned it to the library since. It had a lot of information that I was pretty familiar with, and I was looking for a little bit more of an action plan than just get out in your own personal community and do some good. But also it's hard to tell people exactly what to do because every community is different, so I get it. The next book I've picked up for that project is The Power of Writing It Down, a simple habit to unlock your brain and reimagine your life. This is all about how people will often be like, I've had this story kicking around in my brain for ages and I just need to write it down, and it's kind of an instruction manual on how to open up yourself to actually doing something like that. Something not really known about me is I actually did write a book once. I wrote something for NaNoWriMo back in 2012, I want to say, and there are copies of it kicking around. It is something you can buy, not that I think that you should. But I'm one of those people who has always liked the idea of writing, but I never feel like I have a story to write, so maybe this will help me figure that out. Anyway, those are my bookish updates for now. I am very excited that it's day 40 and that I only have 36 days, including today, to go, and I am definitely going to do it. Hello, I have bookish updates for you. I not only finished The Power of Writing It Down, which I found informative, but also one of those types of books where you've read a whole book on a subject but you don't really know how to repeat any of the information you learned. Basically, I do think that once this challenge is done, instead of reading a book every morning, I'm going to try to take that time and use it as writing time and just see what happens. Maybe I won't write anything that I'm proud of or I enjoy or anything like that, but maybe it will actually help me figure some things out. Who knows? During that time, I also read a nonfiction graphic novel called Wake, The Hidden History of Women-Led Slave Revolts. This one was powerful and a lot of really interesting and heartbreaking information in it, so I definitely recommend it. As for books I can officially use for this challenge, I recently picked up The 12-Hour Walk. This is a book that I'm only about 30 pages into, and then I remembered I should probably be telling you about it. This is about this guy who is a big adventurer. He goes on these really big adventures, like, for example, he did this one where he was trying to be the first person to make it across Antarctica by himself, like no sled dogs, nothing, just him pushing a sled for 12 hours a day. And he was reflecting on that experience and reflecting on talking to some CEOs about it a few months before the lockdown happened. And while he was in lockdown, he was like, you know what, I'm gonna go on a 12-hour walk just by myself, no distractions, and that's basically what he's talking about here, and this whole method to just fixing your mindset by doing that. So I'm excited to go through this and see what other insights he can give me, and then maybe, who knows, I will do a 12-hour walk at some point. Although I really like listening to audiobooks while I walk, so that's going to be a problem because you're not allowed to have any distractions, and that seems like a lot. Hello! Update on nonfiction books that I'm reading that don't strictly count for this challenge, but I'm reading them during this time frame, so I'm going to tell you about them. Firstly, I'm reading In with the Devil by James Keene. This is a nonfiction book about true crime events. Essentially, I watch a lot of true crime on YouTube while I'm working because I can, and I happened upon a video about Larry Hall, who was a serial killer who killed a lot of women, and he was in prison for one of these murders, but there was potential that he was going to get out, and essentially they sent James Keene in to get more confessions from him. But the thing is, James Keene was also in prison for a completely different type of charge. He just seemed to be the type of person that might be able to get Larry to talk, and he did. There's also a TV series about this that I recently watched, and I decided I also wanted to read his book, so I'm doing that. I'm also listening to American Demon as an audiobook, and this one is Eliot Ness and the Hunt for America's Jack the Ripper. I'm listening to this one as an audiobook even though I have a physical copy because it was just something that I could get through my library, so I've been listening to it while I'm walking. Also, the last 2 days I've had migraines, hence why I was listening to this one, because I could just do that with my eyes closed in a dark room. And so far it's really interesting. I'm Canadian and had never heard of Eliot Ness before, which is probably wild to some Americans, but here we are. He's the guy that caught Al Capone. Basically, that's what you need to know. And he's also on this case, and it's very early into the case as I'm listening to it now. Anyway, that was my update. I have 10 more days of this challenge. This is fantastic. Hi, I'm here to tell you I finished another nonfiction book that doesn't count for the challenge, but I told you I was going to tell you about all the nonfiction, so here we are. That book was Page Boy by Elliot Page. Overall, I enjoyed this, although there were a few things about it that hit me kind of the wrong way. One is it's structured very weirdly. There's not really a set structure to it. Two, there are certain things that are just kind of glossed over and there's very little introspection about them, such as he's been sexually assaulted in his time. And he basically just tells us that happens and then moves on to something else. And then three, I thought I was going to see a little bit more of the behind the scenes of Hollywood and that type of thing. It's completely fine. It always feels a little bit weird to like rate or complain about how somebody writes their own memoirs because it's literally their own story. They can do what they want with it. So there were a few things that I was hoping to get out of this that I only sort of got, and then other things that I was just like, I don't know how to feel about how it was told to us, but again, it's not my story, so that's fine. I actually finished reading that probably yesterday or the day before and then remembered I should probably tell you about it, and I kept thinking maybe I'll just tell you tomorrow on the last day of the challenge. But tomorrow is going to be all about the fact that it is the last day, so I'm going to go to my last cardio dance class of this 75-day challenge, and I will talk to you tomorrow about the data of things that have happened over the last 75 days at that point, and then make sure I literally get to midnight before calling myself a winner. And then on Friday, my goodness, I'm having cake and wine. You know it's a serious part of the vlog when I've put you back on the tripod. It is currently day 75 of the 75 hard challenge for me, and I just finished my last book, my last official book for this challenge, which means that I read 5 books that officially counted for this challenge, plus I think another 6 or 7 that you saw throughout this vlog. So just for page count, because that's the first stat I'm going to tell you in this section of the video, for the official books that I read, because I didn't tabulate the amount of pages for the unofficial books, I read 1130 pages, so that's well past the 750 that one typically would have to have for this challenge. I do still have about 12 hours left on this challenge because it's almost noon and obviously we go till midnight, although I'm not going to stay up to midnight and then like have cake or wine or something like that because I typically go to bed around 10 o'clock because I'm an old lady. But I did just do my final weigh-in and measurements for this challenge. Now, I didn't know if I was going to include this section of it because obviously this has been mostly about the books. However, I do understand that some people will want to know this information. So if this is information that's going to be triggering for you, please skip forward. If this is information that you actually want to have, here it's going to be. I'm not going to read out every single stat and every start and end weight and measurement and that type of thing, but I will put some information on the screen. On day 1 of of this challenge, I was 196 pounds, and today, on day 75 of this challenge, I am 175 pounds, which means I have lost 21 pounds. Obviously, I could have lost more fat than that, because muscle weighs more than fat and all that type of stuff, but I have no idea what my body fat mass index, whatever that crap that is, so that's the only way I can tell you about that. As for losing inches, or as I actually recorded it as centimeters, because I figured centimeters are smaller and the numbers of what I lost will be bigger if I measure in centimeters. And I had the option of doing either, so that's why I did it. I lost at least a centimeter in all of the different locations that I measured for this challenge. I will put it on the screen for you. I'm not going to read it out individually, but this is pretty good considering I just assumed that nothing would happen. Because every other fitness challenge I've ever done, I've never lost any weight and I hadn't taken any measurements, so I couldn't even go by that metric. More important metrics for me are the fact that at the beginning of this, I just really wanted stairs and walking up hills to suck less, and it turns out that is actually accurate now. Going upstairs and going up hills sucks less than it used to, which is a great feeling. Additionally, my t-shirts fit better, which is really good because we were getting to the point where they were not fitting like I would want them to fit, and I was becoming uncomfortable and I didn't want to have to buy a whole new wardrobe. So that's excellent that I don't have to do that. Some final thoughts for this challenge. It is definitely doable. You just have to make sure to plan ahead, make sure that you are focusing on certain aspects, know what your limits are going to be. For example, there were at least a few days where I was just absolutely exhausted and did not want to do a second workout. And you know what I did? I either went for another walk, which is something I find very easy, especially once I'm out the door, like it's done, it's easy to do, or I did yoga, which is also very, very good for the fact that if I'm tired, and I'm tired because like my back hurts because I've been working at the computer for too long or any of that type of stuff, it actually helps with all of that. So even though I wasn't like pumping iron or running a marathon or whatever, it was still a workout. I still did it. I'm also really excited that I'm no longer going to have to drink as much water. I'm currently on bottle 2 of 5 for the day. As we get to colder time, it's always harder for me to drink water. For example, I usually drink one of these during my morning walk, and I could only drink about half of it just because it was so cold out and the water was so cold and I was just not digging it. So I'm excited to drink less water. I will still try to continue to drink an adequate amount, but I'm not going to be drinking 4 liters a day because it's excessive and I don't need to. It's not summer anymore. I mean, it is technically summer for another week, but it sure doesn't feel like it anymore. Thanks for coming along on this journey. If I do this again, say next year, what book should I put on my list? Let me know down below. If you've ever attempted the 75 hard, let me know how it went. Also, if you're now thinking about doing it, let me know all about that down in the comments below. On the way down in the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. I'm going to go put this in the fridge so I can drink it tomorrow after work. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!